We're here with Ryan Dawson. This is Addy Ads, Anakin Skywalker, YouTube's chosen one. Ryan Dawson is a filmmaker, documentarian, and historian who went to William and Mary College. He's been doing political activism for 20 years about now, although it doesn't really look like it, Ryan. Um,
Thanks.
Thanks for chatting with me today. And Ryan just asked me what the topic was, and I was just telling him that I'm really grateful for the chance to talk with him. But I just wanted to start with your love of history. Do you remember what started that or why that started?
um, I have a twin brother who was very interested in history, and I think just conversations with him. I was more of a science person at first, but just the discussions we used to have, and then he would read all these books and kind of summarize them, and I was doing other stuff, and there wasn't like a one thing. I mean, lots. I've always enjoyed certain parts of history, but then I started realizing it was more important than just being interesting. You can really learn from historical mistakes if you bother to learn what they were. But a lot of people, they don't really delve into it. And for example, the huge conflict in Palestine between the Israelis and Palestinians, there are a lot of almost ancient historical claims being made. And if you're ignorant of ancient history, then you can't really sort any of that out. And I think the history of economics is very interesting. The history of philosophy is very interesting. Most people, when they think of history, they just think of the history of wars, who killed who and took this territory or that. But history of science, there's a lot of different histories in the. I think it's the most important thing is everything that's ever happened, and so it's endless material. And if you're not interested in history, then you're just not interested in anything because that's the largest subject we have.
That's true. It is the largest subject we have. And your twin brother put you onto it. Where's he now?
He's in the United States. I think we were both interested into it, but it was just I was when you have an identical twin, you tend to purposely not do the same things to differentiate yourself, and just why, I can trust his judgment on stuff. So I'm like, oh, you go delve into the Civil War, and I'm gonna go look into World War One or whatever and compare notes.
Oh, wow. That's so cool
Yeah.
that you guys got to do that. But what got me honestly into it more so, like more deeply than I had been into it before, I think was World War II. And you actually blew my mind with, and well, let me just back up before we get into World War II. You mind fucked me, man. Like, and this hasn't happened in a while where a YouTuber just like mind fucks me and like shifts my consciousness. Like I had to lie down for a little bit, like after one of your videos. Believe it or not,
Don't go look at my bit shoot then, because it's way
is
way more
way
red pilly.
yeah, way more black pill. I'm going to check it out though. I haven't yet, but it was actually your performance essay on fatalism and video gaming, and I watched it and I was like, wow, that is so sad. Like, and I had to like sit
That's what
down
I
for like
saw though.
20
That's
minutes and just think about it. Yeah, do
I
you
have a
want to go
degree
into
in
that a little
philosophy
bit?
too. Um, I studied philosophy at William and Mary. That's history of philosophy is very interesting because you can see how. Uh, I don't think you can really understand history without philosophy or philosophy without history. You kind of need at least a B plus in each to understand what's going on, because culture and social factors and religion and so on uh, really influence philosophical ideas. But I was thinking more of something modern on this. We have a whole generation that has grown up in the digital age. Like, wait, I started in the paper age, right? And I've been alive through the beginning of
Ryan, just
the
you don't
internet
have to
and so
tell us
on.
the exact number, but can you give us a ballpark of how, because you're really hard to guess your age because you look quite young.
40s.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So maybe I look 30s. I don't know.
I mean, you could pass for late 20s, man.
um, do we say gumsuri in Japanese? Like brown nose? Maybe nowadays, because a lot of people do doing drugs and whatnot, they age a little faster. But
Hajimimashite.
Genki desu. It's
Yoroshiku
good to meet you.
onegai
You know a little bit of Japanese.
Squishy desu. Hi. Genki?
Wonderful. Mm, EA. I'm actually I'm a
Okay,
little
that's
bit
that's pretty
sick.
much all I know. But speaking of Japan, you live in mainland, right? Osaka?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes,
And
I do.
what, because you're obviously American, from the South, what made you move to Japan? Is it your hatred of the United States, Ryan?
No, I always joke George Bush got reelected, and I said, "F it, I'm out." But um, I just wanted to visit Japan for. I wanted, when I was in my 20s, before I got locked into a job, I thought I want to travel while I can, and Japan was on the list for a number of reasons. I mean, why not? But it has a lot of my interests overlap with Japanese things throughout different phases of my life. Uh, Even though it would change, whether it was martial arts or art or gaming or whatever, it was always Japanese. So I thought I would just come visit, and I really wasn't planning on moving, but I did because once you're here, it's hard to return. Um, it's really hard. The United States was at war, which I vehemently opposed, and in Afghanistan and Iraq, and then they reelected a warmonger. And even if they hadn't, the other choice was still a warmonger with John Kerry. It wouldn't have made a dime's worth of difference, and I don't want to pay for that. And once I had children, I really had to think about it too. I mean, in the U.S. schools, they're shooting people and they're doping them up on Adderall, and it's violent. Even if it's not like violent with guns and knives and so on, just it's verbally violent. People are really abusive to each other. They don't even notice it because it's just like fish don't know they're in the water. It's so pervasive that they don't see it unless you step out of it. And after being out of the United States and going back in, and I would just listen to conversations, even with friends, six people in rumors, and they're always putting each other down. Even if it's sarcasm, it's still like hostile the whole time. And then a lot of friends, they just are really catty and backstabby, especially the women. They would just dog each other. And I don't see that here. It's very different. And I never realized the level of stress and just hostility that people walk around with in the US. They're a little bit on edge all the time. People are paranoid of each other, right? There's bars on windows in certain schools in certain cities and things. The level of theft and violence is so high. You just like, oh, I can't go to that place at this time of night by myself. Why not? And that's just accepted as normal, but it's not normal. You should be able to go out anywhere, wherever, alone or not. You could here. You can't do that in a lot of American cities. Like they just know, especially as a woman or something, alone in Detroit at this alleyway, or whatever, you're just asking for something. That's not normal, right? That level of violence and fear, and that shouldn't exist, but it's pretty much unfixable at this point. But there are places in the world that, like Japan, maybe South Korea, there are spots where, yeah, it's perfectly fine to go wherever you want, whenever you want. And so for my kids, I'm looking at education. I'm looking at the cost of healthcare. I'm looking at all the disadvantages in the U.S. I don't want them to have to deal with that. So I stayed.
When you were talking about the differences in people and social interactions, Ryan, were you talking about young people specifically or Americans in general?
In general, but I think the youth is it's getting worse because they have this trade up culture. The what is it? Tinder, is that the
That's one of them.
one of the things?
I
Yeah,
don't use them, but
we didn't have that. Like I knew my neighbors and we'd play basketball and ride bikes and stuff, but you couldn't just. It's so easy to meet complete strangers now with Facebook and Tinder and whatever that when as soon as somebody does one little thing that's annoying, or just ghost that person, get another one, they're totally replaceable. And there's no real conflict resolution. They're not learning how to cope with stress and deal with disagreements, and they are making echo chambers, and we call it purity spirals. And I see these little clicks going into purity spirals, and I'm thinking, man, it really creates an approval seeking subculture where the lemmings will know what they're supposed to think and say, and they'll do it because they don't want to be socially ostracized.
Yeah.
And more they're being pushed into a sort of virtual uh, social life. I see kids spending hours and hours on Fortnite or first person shooter games or whatever. And I don't have a problem with video games or anything, TV, phones, whatever your thing is you like to do, as long as you're only doing it for entertainment or something. But I think it's both that and a bit of escapism. And what I was saying in the video that you saw was, I don't think the youth really see a clear connection between effort and reward. Like, they could put enormous effort into a project in school or at a job or whatever, and it won't matter because it's all about who you know, nepotism, etc., to such a degree that why bother becomes the attitude. Whereas in a game, your output is based on your input. The more you play, the more you practice, the more items you get or whatever. Like in an RPG game, the more you advance, and there's a clear connection between hard work, or time you put in, and results, which is something very enjoyable and satisfying because they don't see that in the real
It's
world.
the best feeling, I think. And I've actually struggled with this belief in my past as well, which is I think one of the reasons why your essay that you performed affected me so much is it seems that one of the if not the most demoralizing thing is not seeing any reward for your effort, right? I mean,
Right.
that's what I think.
You're
Like,
thinking years too, like, oh, go to college. Like, you're talking about investing a big chunk of your life, really, and it might not matter at all. And how motivated can you be into something that you're gonna really gamble here, spend a lot of money, spend a lot of your time, good time, of your youth pursuing something, and in the end, so what? Or worse, now you're in debt or something. And it used to be like, for my parents' generation, like, if you went to college, it was good as gold. Like, you were getting a good job, and that just isn't the case now, and they know it. And it's not just because, oh, they majored in gender studies of hippos or whatever.
right.
People will say that. I see a lot of people just dogging on the youth, and I see people making fun of boomers and stuff too. And it's a little tit for tat, but um, I feel like the young people, they've really got a bad lot, and this is why they're so bitter and lash out against other generations, whatever, because they're never going to own a house, right? They're never, unless you know the right people and everything. There'll be 30, mid 30s, maybe 40 before they can pay off a mortgage. And they'd need to basically either work for someone they knew. It has nothing to do with their own
Merit.
effort, right? It's nothing to do with their merit. Just like a minimal level. Or you're not, can you read and all, things you could have left school in seventh grade and do what you end up doing anyway.
Yeah.
Right? You don't, what you specialize in really doesn't matter. You learn 90% of what you're going to do on the job in the first 2 weeks of the job. Like, every job you're going to have, except for some specialist things, even when you're a
Right.
lawyer, etc., that's the one you get. I'm like, not really. You do an apprenticeship and you follow them around at the firm or at the doctor's hospital, whatever, and you learn it on the job. You really learn a lot of the skills by doing them. And so this whole idea of liberal arts education has really failed the population because they're not learning pragmatic skills, or it's very unbalanced. Like, there is a purpose for liberal arts. I get the argument and all, but it's very lopsided. And a guy that wrote about a lot was Ted Kaczynski. He ended up losing his mind. He was the Unabomber. But if you read his manifesto, you shouldn't dismiss the point somebody makes just because of the end. Like at the end, he ended up mailing bombs and things. Like,
Or another thing people do is they dismiss an entire person's beliefs based on one belief.
right. Or they'll say, or they play the false dichotomy game. If you're good at A, you must suck at B, because it's this, and that's where you get a lot of silly stereotypes. Oh, blondes are dumb, athletes are dumb, smart people are socially backwards, whatever. There's always some negative thing attached to any positive quality. And it's a way, it's crabs in a bucket. It's a way of bringing people down. Oh, you're really XYZ, but I bet ABC bad, right? About you. And that's what they try and nail people with. It's a cult of the inferiority personality, where so if someone's beautiful or athletic or intelligent or some positive quality, it's necessary for that for their own psychology to tack onto that something negative to help bring that person down so they feel better about themselves.
Yeah.
And
You
it
went to
usually just doesn't
college though,
apply.
Ryan. Just going back to the college thing, you went to William and Mary, as I mentioned.
Hmm.
What was, looking back on it, and I know it was a while ago for you now, what was that like for you now, and what did you do immediately after in how you used your degree, if at all?
Actually, I went to college because my girlfriend was at the college. That's the whole reason I did it.
That's not a good
and to,
reason,
and
Ryan.
to prove that I could get into this school. It's a very prestigious school, and I was like, I'll do that. And I thought college would be beneficial from the social aspects as well. And for me, it was beneficial studying philosophy and history. Although most of my work outside of school has been in government and economics, like politically uh, centered, I guess, about geopolitics and
Mm,
terrorism, war, etc. But I think the skills I learned in writing papers for history gave me general research skills. If I can cite a paper for uh, something about World War II, I could do it about the Iraq War also, you know. So in a way, it gave me a skill set that was useful, even though it's not directly related. And philosophy as well, I've seen, and definitely in politics. I mean, political ideologies are just watered down philosophies for the masses. it's
yeah.
But you can see it. It's the cult personality that people get. If I criticize Obama, then so you love Trump,
Yeah,
or
right.
vice versa, right? If not A, then B. I call it basic bitch syndrome. Um, my co-host calls it the light switch mentality. It's either this one or that one.
Oh, there you go.
And
Is that the
uh,
pug? The pug guy?
yeah, I've got
Yeah.
several. I have Andrew is my sort of Syrian war specialist. Pug, we're usually doing health related or general stuff, and the election's coming, so he's been coming on more and more. And I have another guy, Chris, in Britain for specific things like Brexit and stuff. And then Michael Darr from the United States. Um, he's in the meme wars right now, deep in the trenches.
I saw your video. You guys do that every year on your channel?
Well, just the presidential elections is where it kind of started the great meme war of 2016.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm not that involved other than encouraging it. Um, I like doing I like doing films, and supposed to be the serious guy, but I feel like you need both to maximize your effect. You need someone who can do the humor, someone that can meme. You got to get your foot in the door, but all that has to ultimately lead to, okay, here's the real grits of it. Here's a documentary or something. And that's
Right.
my role.
Some
But
substance. And
yeah,
speaking
I
of
like the
foot
memes
in the
though.
door, I was watching another video actually right before you joined me, and you're wearing a MAGA hat, and behind you in many of your videos is the Confederate flag. And you said something in Sean's podcast.
I had a MAGA hat.
Yeah,
Okay.
it was your video on Spencer.
Huh. I don't remember.
Okay.
Maybe.
You're also
I
wearing a
often
bull.
have the Confederate flag. That's right there actually. But yeah, I must have had a reason for the MAGA hat. I didn't even know I owned one.
Yeah, I'm not trying to paint you a certain way or anything, because I know
It
you're
might have,
not.
I might have done that right after the election or something just to rub their noses in it. Like,
Yeah,
ha.
you're wearing a John Bolton shirt. It was
Oh, I got that right now.
oh, the orange one?
Yeah, Bolton must go.
That's
Yep.
crazy. You're wearing the same shirt.
Oh, I made this shirt.
Oh, you did. Awesome.
Yeah, I designed all those things, and he did go. I
Yeah.
made a Bolton must go and started that campaign, and he was fired. So
So
not
let's
bad.
talk about, and I think this will segue into World War II, just the Confederate flag. You said the story you told at the end of Sean's interview, man, that story was crazy, bro. Like
Oh, going
about
to
your,
Google.
yeah, that one
Yeah.
too. And we should get into that. But you're talking about your ancestor that was in the Civil War, and you
Oh,
said
I
something
got
to
a
the
lot of
effect
stories
of
like that.
the
Yeah.
South are the good guys. And when you said
Hmm.
that, I was like, well, I don't take everything you say 100%, Ryan, because you have very similar humor to what I find funny. And I know you weren't serious, but can you explain why you said that in terms of the Confederacy?
Well, there's no like good guys, bad guys, but in any war, it's the poor fighting the poor. That's what happens. And the Civil War was a banker war, just like every other war. The spin on it is, oh, this is like 100 years after they start saying, oh yeah, the Civil War was fought to end slavery,
Yeah.
which is about as accurate as saying we went into Afghanistan for women's liberation, or we invaded Iraq because we felt sympathy for the Kurds. And you could point to very um, real life statistics on how, yeah, women don't have rights in Afghanistan, and the Kurds were an oppressed minority in Iraq, but it has nothing to do with why we went to war. Went to war in Afghanistan to control opium because it's used as an off the books budgetary item that can finance illegal activities like sponsoring Al Qaeda and terrorist groups in Syria. And we went to war in Iraq because a bunch of neocons of Israeli partisans lied and dragged us into war because Saddam Hussein was supporting Palestinians. There's nothing to do with it. And the Civil War was because the North invaded the South. The South didn't attack the North. The South seceded from the North. It's the North that attacked. And I can summarize the causes real fast. I can send you a video on it with all the details and stuff. But
Please
essentially,
do.
the the main reason for Southerners to fight the Civil War was they were being attacked. The main reasons for secession is different than the reason for a war because they were not planning to go to war with the United States. Lincoln was. He procured the entire U.S. Navy prior. He was planning on doing this. He put a naval blockade on three of his own states: South Carolina, North Carolina, and Virginia. North Carolina and Virginia had not seceded yet, and had they not seceded, there is no Civil War because that was half the Southern population was Virginia and Carolinas. The first shots are at Fort Sumter, where they were collecting the new import-export taxes, and that's what they were fighting for. You had 25% of the population paying 87% of the taxes, and almost the entire revenue was being dumped into New York and Boston and Philly, and it wasn't being spent on the South at all. And the tariffs that they put on imports from Europe were bad in and of themselves, and it resulted in mirrored tariffs by Europeans on American goods on cotton and tobacco, but that only affects one area. New York doesn't care if there's a huge tax on cotton because they're not making cotton. They're buying cotton from the South, who would be forced to sell to them because they can't sell to the Europeans. On top of that, they got taxed to export their goods as well, which benefited the North because they're not exporting textiles to Europe. Europe's way more advanced on textiles. They've been established a lot longer. It was the economic reasons. The other one was they were competing from railroads between Chicago to San Francisco and New Orleans to San Francisco. It didn't matter about slaves. 5 northern states had slaves and fought on the Union side. When the 13th Amendment came to be ratified, 3 northern states refused. You didn't just lose more than 500,000 people and then not sign to ratify the amendment that would liberate slaves. Also, there's the Corbin Amendment prior to the Civil War ever starting, not a single shot fired, where they enshrined slavery in the Constitution, and it was the North had already signed it. All the South had to do was sign it, but to sign it, they'd have to stay in the Union, and every single one of them refused. So it can't be about slavery. When Lincoln personally wrote every governor and said, if you your state needs to stay in, if you sign this document, we're not going to mess with the institution of slavery. That's how badly Lincoln wanted. Lincoln wasn't pro-slavery. He wanted whites and blacks to be completely separate. It was worse. He was a send them back to Africa guy or send them to South America guy.
Can
And
I just ask, because this is a lot to process, Ryan. Where did you get that info about Lincoln?
oh, I've got lots of books on Lincoln. The Corwin Amendment, you can look it up. I mean,
Okay.
Lincoln personally wrote Corwin Amendment,
Hmm.
and it said that they weren't going to mess with labor, which included slavery, if they would stay in the Union, and they all refused. Um, Virginia was split in half. I mean, that's why we have West Virginia. But the western part of Virginia was not affected by the tariff so much because they're not on the coast and they're not on the Mississippi River. So it didn't matter for that part of the state. And so they were Americans and they stayed in the Union, although they did have slaves. Kentucky had slaves, Delaware had slaves, the Washington D.C., the capital of the North, had slaves. Grant had slaves. The general, the Union general, he had slaves. Robert E. Lee freed his slaves. So it wasn't like that. And East Tennessee and Western North Carolina tried to remain pretty neutral. Um, Parts of Maryland were Southern, parts were Northern. It wasn't even really clear. And they'll talk about the Mason-Dixon line, but that doesn't divide the North and South from the Civil War.
Yeah.
But and a
Well,
lot of
thanks for that,
Southerners that are
Ryan.
fighting that war are not.
Yeah, go
They
ahead.
didn't have any slaves. They're poor as hell.
Mhm.
Like, they don't benefit from it either. I mean, think about how much they complain now of just having cheap labor from Mexico, whatever. Try having free labor. Can't compete with that. Um, it was bad, but Lincoln would say things like he didn't want blacks and whites to mix blood. He didn't want any of the new territories to be slaveholding, not because of how abhorrent slavery is, but because he didn't want blacks and whites to live together, period. And none
Mm,
of them were. Um, Slavery was on its way out anyway, globally, and you didn't have to have a massive fight to get rid of it anywhere else. But they made it an issue during in the middle of the war uh, to help keep European powers from siding with the South and joining the war. They tried to make some moral veneer and make it about slavery, which kind of backfired because a lot of people in the Union Army were like, "I'm not fighting for that," and
yeah. That is
yeah,
a
it's
lot
just,
to process, and I'm definitely going to do my diligence on reading reading about that because something like that just it like shifts your whole perspective on such a huge event um that it takes time I think to process that sort of new information.
it is. But the largest race riots in history were in New York City during the Civil War, where
Hmm.
they went around hanging black people. Custer went west and murdered Native Americans right after the war,
Yeah.
and they enslaved the Chinese. So it's not like the North was some anti-racist
Yeah,
utopia or
right.
something. They hated black people. They hated American Indians. They didn't even consider them people. The final solution is not from Hitler. It's from William Tecumseh Sherman, the same
Yeah.
man that burned Atlanta wanted to kill every Indian. He's also the guy that only good Indian's a dead Indian. He did Wounded Knee. General Custer went out all the way to Little Bighorn. He was defeated by Crazy Horse, but he tried to murder them all. And they'll say, "Oh, the Chinese weren't slaves." Yeah, they were, and they're paid in script.
They
And
made the railways.
the half from the west to the east, and they
Yeah.
use blacks and Irish to build from the east to the west. Yeah.
Wow. So World War II. As I said before, it's one of the big things that got me interested in learning about history, especially in the past few years. Why isn't World War II the good war?
Yeah, that's often the thing is they'll say, well, surely that's the exception, right? Is World War II. And I say, well, you're starting the story in the middle. Because, like, yeah, you have to have a war. Like when the North invaded the South, I understand defending your home so they don't burn it down and kill you. You got to fight at that point.
Right.
And, once World War II gets going, you can't, it's already gone, but there wouldn't have been a World War II if there hadn't been a World War One. if there hadn't been a Treaty of Versailles that took land away from the Germans. And German speaking people living in Poland and were living in France, and they're not French, they're not Polish, they're German, and you just took the land away and awarded it to someone else that is not part of their sovereignty. It's not the right culture, it's not the right linguistic group or anything. And they didn't start World War I. The Allies did, right? The Serbians killed Franz Ferdinand in Austria.
Mm.
Russia had an interest, and the French central bank had loaned a lot of money to the Russians for their rapid industrialization, and they needed them to pay back those loans, which they weren't going to do if they lost the war. And World War I begins, but who started that? And since when are all these colonial powers some bastion of morality? They took 40% of the planet, right? 44 million Africans in the slave trade. The Belgian killed 15 million in just the Congo. King Leopold. He should be right up there when people are saying Hitler, Stalin, King Leopold. 15 million, right? You had Holodomor in between the two wars. About 8 to 11 million Ukrainians killed by Soviets. But what the French and British had done all over the world, I mean, India was part of Britain. All the Western Africa was French. And this was all by force, right?
Yeah.
Japan had annexed Korea. And so suddenly, it's mysterious to me how these groups can wave their finger at anybody, at the Germans, for reclaiming German land that had been taken. They're not like, at first, anyway, it gets, obviously, what happens. But at first, they were trying to reunite to Danzig. And how can these colonial powers that have replaced their languages, of like the Americas, Canada, they all speak English now. Didn't start that way,
Right.
right? Almost all of South America is either Portuguese or Spanish. There's some Amerindian languages around, but they colonized everything. And they're saying, how dare you go into Poland? My perspective is, yes, it was wrong. Absolutely what the Third Reich did, but it was just as wrong when all the powers fighting them did the same things. They were still trying to gain independence years after World War II, in Algeria, Vietnam. The French got out, the Americans got in. They still trying to maintain that colonial empire. So
Poland too.
yeah, everyone. And it's not. It wasn't like good versus evil, right? It's governments, all of whom had murdered tens of millions of people, right?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, the Allies defeat the Axis. But I don't think the communist Chinese or the Soviet Union or the imperial powers of Britain, France, and the United States were good guys, right? Nor were, the Imperial Japan or Fascist Italy or the Third Reich under Adolf Hitler. They're not good guys either. But what you see from that war is you can point to the communists and say, oh, this many tens of millions of people end up starving, yada yada. You can point to the fascists and show all the people they murdered. You can also point to the democratic republics and all of their genocidal history too. It's not the type of government that made a difference. It's government. And what unifies all three of them, fascist, communist, imperialist, is authoritarianism. That's what leads this collectivism, us versus them. But prior to World War II, most wars were to gain access to some kind of resource, whether it was gold or opium or trade routes or something. There was silver mines, what have you. From ancient times on, they're going after property or some sort of super resource, oil, gold, whatever. But from World War II on, the waging war itself became a resource, because when they started to mechanize militaries, the cost of building all the airplanes and tanks and all the machinery that goes into a modern war is billions and billions of dollars. And these industries have become the new East India Tea Company, right? That's a company that had as much or more money than the crown. These super corporations, the Lockheed Martins of the world, where it doesn't matter what they have. picking a fight generates profits for what people call the military industrial complex. And
Wow.
so and they always evoke Hitler as an excuse to do whatever they want. Oh, Saddam's the new Hitler. Gaddafi's the new Hitler. Ahmadinejad's the new Hitler. Assad's Hitler. Putin's Hitler. Whoever they don't like, they just say Hitler, and everyone stops thinking and gets emotional and go, well, you gotta hate Hitler, right? And he's new Hitler. Or this so and so's a Nazi, so it's okay to do violence.
It's so
And it's the
interesting
only
because you
thing you
hear
can say
about
is
it.
evil
Oh no, go
anymore.
ahead, Ryan.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was like, the only thing you can say is evil anymore is Nazism. Like that's well, if you're on a college campus, whatever, it's like 3, 2, 1 Nazi comparison, right? What about the Nazis? It's always a thing, as if there's any lack of other examples of evil, right? But that's always the thing because we didn't do it
Yeah,
for
it's
once. It was
very
the
interesting
Germans.
because you hear growing up, you hear that name Hitler a lot, but you almost never hear Stalin. You never hear Zedong. You don't hear these other
Pol
dictators.
Pot, yeah.
Why is that?
I think one main reason is because it was on film. So we saw the liberated camps and things. It's very shocking. And a lot of that film actually was uh, a little bit Hollywoodified, which I don't like because I think the atrocity is bad enough without exaggerations. And I think you also risk every time you make an exaggeration, you're risking people doubting the whole thing. I see that with like global warming alarmist. The world is not going to disappear in 12 years, 10 years now. Don't say stuff like that, right? Don't do it. Um, I see that too with September 11th or something, which I'm at 100% behind researching 9/11 and how independent Al Qaeda actually is from intelligence agencies, and all the grown up version is fine. But when people start saying, oh, yeah, holograms or some ridiculous exaggeration like that, then you've discredited the whole thing. The same thing with the Kennedy assassinations, 100% conspiracy to murder both Kennedys. But you get some real Fruit Loopy stuff, and it doesn't help, right? This kind of exaggerations don't help with anything. So
Yeah,
I think the reason though is you didn't hear about Stalin so much. One, because they won, and the winners write history.
yeah.
um, and the other one is, well, if he was so bad, but we were on his team, so that makes us look bad because we were allied with the Soviets in attacking fascism. So fascism has to be worse. It has to be because that's the ones we were against, and we were on the same side as the Soviet Union. Well,
Just
there
goes
doesn't
back
have
to
to be
that black and
anybody
white
good, right?
thinking again.
It
Yeah.
is, it is, and we got to be the good guys.
Mm.
So they'll feel, well, we liberated the Jews and we did this and blah blah blah. I mean, you could spin that around and say, well, Hitler, whether he meant to or not, destroyed the British Empire, liberated over 87 countries that used to be under the yoke of imperialism, and gave them independence. Like that's how they see it. They
That's
love him.
definitely an argument to be made there for that
He didn't.
perspective.
That's not what he was trying to do, but that's what that the result was. The British Empire was destroyed, and a lot of nations were got their independence and got their sovereignty back.
Your forum that you were running back in '07, what it was it a political forum where you just people just discuss things?
So it started in 2005. It started. I was actually on this forum for this is so weird. Nocturne, which was just some a band I liked, and I posted something there on mistake, like too many tabs open, something about philosophy called "You're Not What You Own," and they really liked it, so they put a like philosophy section, and it had an audience and stuff already. So I just started posting stuff on there, and then someone's like, "You need your own forum," and I was not tech savvy at all. So I started. We had Rise 2 Cents back in 2005 or so, and so I started writing on there, and I think after Mm, I think because of the Iraq War and September 11th, people wanted to hear my thoughts on that, and that became the most popular thing. So in 2005, I wrote this thing called Iraq 9/11 PNAC, All Roads Lead to Israel, which has over 500,000 reads, which is a lot for, no videos or anything. And you have to realize Facebook and all that didn't exist.
I
YouTube didn't
vaguely
exist.
remember it, Ryan. For us, that was like what I was using was like MSN Messenger. Like that was
Hmm.
my age. But yeah, it was that was like the early days where you really had to. The only people on the internet were like you said, those more tech savvy people.
Yeah, there was like Newgrounds and stuff. That was your old school shit posting, E-Bombs World and
Oh, I remember
Blue
eBaum's
Envy.
World. It's still running, isn't it? eBaum's World.
I mean, he's a renowned plagiarist. He just took a bunch of videos and wrote E-Bombs World on it. So he's just a professional watermarker. But yeah, they might still be going. Newgrounds is still going. I used to know Tom Fulp, one of the founders of that. They bought it. There's something called Trauma Films. They did they do parody movies. So they did Tromeo and Juliet. Swamp Thing is one of theirs. Tromeo and Juliet is narrated by Lenny from Motorhead, which just makes it that much more awesome. It's all modern day, like they're getting tattoo nipple piercings and tattoos and stuff. The
Oh my
Catholics,
goodness.
yeah, it's real trashy in a cool in a fun Trailer Park Boys sort of way. And anyway, they bought their servers from them and started Newgrounds. And Newgrounds was like Flash animation when it first got started, and it was pretty basic at first. And now it's uncontrollable. But back then, when you had a forum, it was like GeoCities and Angel Fire and stuff like that.
Yeah,
And
GeoCities. I remember making stuff like sites on GeoCities. Yeah.
yeah, it was cool. Like you'd have text, and then if you had like a bar, like a blood drippy bar, or just bars you could download, like GIF images, because animated GIFs were new, or GIFs or whatever. Yeah, so yeah, it was pretty low tech, and that's what. So to get 500,000 reads on that was,
That's quite an achievement
a
back
lot of
then.
people go, "Whoa, I hadn't heard this." And then it all got derailed by Alex Jones. He started with the loose change and all this other crap, and I couldn't make a documentary until YouTube came about in 2006. But back then they had time limits, so you couldn't go more than 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And what am I on part 27? Like it was ridiculous.
You know what's crazy, Ryan, is I think I remember watching one of your videos when I was younger because I have always been a huge fan of YouTube. And up until like the past couple years, like I think it was like 90 or 80% of the users were male. So it was like usually just like tech savvy, like young people or
Yeah.
that demographic that would be on YouTube. And I
It's
can't
because
remember.
most of the internet is male because of porn. Like the two things that drove the internet to become the internet were pornography and video games, which are very male dominated. And the guys that put in the effort to learn like about videos and pictures and all that, it was partly motivated by you know, getting their yank on or whatever. So that's how YouTube started.
It comes back to porn always, doesn't it?
It's a billion-dollar industry, and kind of serendipitously it led to the net growing as fast as it did. Like the reason people got faster connections and so on was so they could get porn quicker. They could
Oh,
get videos instead of pictures. And as enough people had enough internet that was, getting off dial up and all that and getting quicker and processing things better and so on, that then allowed for alternative history sites, political sites, and all the stuff we have now. But in the beginning, it wasn't much other than porn and news. It was like that was the internet. It's just because
yeah.
that's what you know. Before the internet, that you couldn't pornography. You have to go to some convenience store and get a magazine or something about all you could do, and you had to be 18. And
Hmm.
uh, so once it was available, they went nuts. And the early days used to be like sample picture and stuff like that. But our house is more of the gaming thing. My little brother was doing that stuff, and games really pushed for faster processing and video cards and all that was good because
Gamers,
of
especially.
it was because of Warcraft and Starcraft, man. That's where they finally could play each other. And so the PC games start coming, and then phones and all. You see it evolve. And there's a talk in Tropic Thunder, some nerd has gone off about the history of the internet, and my little brother's like, "That's is very accurate what he just said." Like it's getting ignored in the film. The guy's like, "Are you still talking?" or something. But the whole thing he went through apparently was pretty accurate. But before all these, before there was MySpace, before Facebook, it was very similar. But before that, it was forums, and
Mm,
so it was this weird thing where you get in a forum. Maybe you had an avatar. You
yeah.
know, they didn't even start with avatars at first. You just had nicknames and stuff. And I remember the guys in my forum. We had like Socrates and Tim, and we had a crypto Chris Bolin. Um,
That's
and
crazy.
we
You
would,
remember those guys' names, their
I
usernames.
do, because for 2 or 3 years, we're writing everything. I wrote out all the BS about the Iraq War, and eventually it got me on my first radio show was on. It was out of Irving, California. It was like QAX 92 or something with Robert Larson, and I explained the anthrax, what happened with the anthrax after 9/11. And once people heard it, I mean, what I'm saying makes sense and can be verified, but you kind of don't even know that you don't know. Like you don't know what to look for
Yeah.
until, and that's why I'm expanding into memes and all that. I gotta get my foot in the door because I've already done the hard stuff, like the research part. But
Yeah, I think you're
why
about
would
to
someone
blow up,
listen to
Ryan.
me, right? It's like who like I would, oh, why do I gotta listen to you about the Iraq War? I'm like, you don't, but um you eventually will.
Yeah, it was the your I think it's your most popular video actually, Ryan, the Syria one. And I think I
Oh
remember
yeah, on the new
clicking on it,
channel. Yeah,
and I must have been like a freshman or middle school, I can't remember. And I was just like, why is this popular? And I wasn't about politics at all. I wasn't even interested in politics at the beginning of college, let alone, back then. So I was like, oh,
mhm.
this guy's talking about Israel. I don't really care.
I think it was
Um,
Syria that
or
map
Syria,
was.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
sorry. And I could be getting the dates wrong on that. But yeah,
Yeah, it was
after
almost
that
eight
though,
years ago because it's or 9 years ago. 2011 is the Syrian war, and I made it right. Because I felt like a lot of people know we're at war in Syria, but don't know why. A lot of people know Saudi Arabia is fighting with Yemen, but they don't know why. And so, because there wasn't even an official excuse. And you can't really do the oil thing because Syria is not an oil exporter. And that's what the usual typical leftist does is just anything that happens anywhere, it's because of oil. Like, yeah, you spent all of 5 seconds thinking about that, right? It's not oil. I mean, oil's got negative prices right now. The If you look at a chart of our oil imports from Iraq before and after the war, it doesn't change. And if you try and make the argument, oh, it wasn't for us to get oils, but to prevent other people from getting oil, like China, um, Iraq was not even in the top 15 exporters of oil to China before the war. Now they're like number two after the war, and they're number one to India. So if that was what you're aiming at, you got the opposite result. That's not why we went to war. And that's not why we were in Syria. Syria was complicated. So I did a little video with maps and so on. And actually, the first video I did, I just sat there and talked. I just sat like I am now and explained the whole thing. And someone liked it so much that they animated some maps. And then I animated maps on top of their maps because they actually made a couple of mistakes. But so you can you can see the quality when it switches to MS Paint. That was me. But I had to draw the pipelines where they were in the right places and stuff. And understanding pipeline politics is vital. And so oil is a reason, not the reason. But the larger reasons have to do with geopolitical interests. Mainly, Zionists want to expand into Lebanon, and Hezbollah resistance has always prevented them from doing that. And there's a corridor stretching from Iran through Syria to Lebanon that they call the axis of resistance, and they thought they could break that by invading Syria. So they tried, and they're losing. But Syria has suffered so much, almost a decade now of warfare, fighting Al Qaeda, Al Nasser Front, Al Sham, all these. Wahhabi faction terrorists that are secretly, not very secretly, uh, backed by the United States. So I thought, if I make a video and I don't get too much into details and I show the maps and the pipelines, I'll get them interested in it. And then hopefully they'll watch another video about a little bit more info, a little bit more info, rather than me just dumping it all on them, you know? So, and that worked. I think right now it's got like five or 600,000 views. But I used to get that all the time when YouTube first started. I was one of the first people on it, and like you said, nobody was doing anything. And if they were, it was like, look at my cat, or
Yeah,
I
that's
was the
why I
only.
remember you, because I remember like you said, there was almost nobody on YouTube. So you would like even like Dax Flame. It was just like this middle schooler talking to a camera, and he just blew up because he's so
Yeah,
hilarious.
I was erased in 2008, but I really started to take off because they lifted the time barrier. You could make videos more. It went from 10 minutes to 15 minutes to whatever, right? As long as you had enough views and so on, which I did. I'm like, okay, now I can put up War by Deception. It's this documentary I made about September 11th and the Iraq War. And I don't have to cut it up into a whole bunch of parts. So I did. And like, I remember I sent it to Scott Horton. I was like, watch this. And he said, hey, I was enjoying that. I go, what do you mean? Because in the middle of him watching it, my channel got erased. And I went and this was heartbreaking. I was like, all my work, all my videos, including the movie I just put out finally and sent links to everybody, was all gone. They erased me. And uh, I had a backup channel that from 2006, the one I have now, that I had never really used because the name I didn't like the name I chose. Rise 2 cents was like too weird. It's got a number in the middle and whatever. But when I chose it, I think it didn't matter because I'm not going to be. I never anticipated being on television explaining events since I was like, they're never in Dr. Movie. Doesn't matter what I name it. So the other one was called Rye Anti Neocon. I really like the name Anti Neocon because you can twist what someone says, but if you write anti and then something, they have to twist the meaning of neocon too. Right? That's very clever for Antifa, who I don't support at all, but for them to act like, oh, well, our name is anti-fascist. So if you're against us, that means you're pro-fascist, right? So if
Another
you're
false
against
dichotomy
anti,
that they make.
it is like you guys act like fascists, so you're not very anti-fascist. It's a bunch of LARPing commies, in my opinion. Like, but whatever. If I had not been deleted, then I would have stayed on top because no one was doing political news the way they are now. There's this Sex and Hammer and all these people with 400,000 followers or more, but none of these people are around back in 2006. A lot of them weren't really around until around 2015 or so.
The Young
Around
Turks were there. I don't know if it was
mm-hmm.
'06, but I used to watch them when I was younger. Like I said, on YouTube, and I just had to stop. I was just like, and I was like
Mm-hmm.
fucking I was like 15 or 14 when I stopped watching them. I can't remember, but and I was just like, these guys are just saying nonsense really consistently now, so I had to stop
They were, but
doing
at
that.
first they they could give some legit criticism of Republicans, for
Oh
example,
yeah, yeah, definitely.
but not when it's their team.
Hmm.
Then it's excuse making time. And but that is the right formula. Like if you want a popular channel, just pick a side. If I did all pro Trump stuff or all anti Trump stuff, I could get a good following from that because
Yeah,
it's
I
all
noticed
about
this
approval
trend
seeking.
of minorities, whether it's women or I don't even know what the term would be. People who are Mexican or black, minorities,
Minorities.
making
Yeah.
YouTube channels and saying basically just conservative ideologies and just getting really popular just
Yeah,
because,
it's like I'm Republican and not white. And
yeah,
that's a big deal.
exactly. It's like you can easily just sell out and be like, yo, this is my team, and then go on YouTube and, whatever. But I'm trying to find the truth in,
I think that's the reason that works though, is because, and this is why the left has really shot itself in the face. I don't even say shot itself in the foot. They shot themselves in the face because they've been calling Trump essentially a Nazi and a rapist. Like they accused him of rape and they called him literally Hitler, right? You're a Nazi, you're a racist, homophobic, xenophobic, bigoted, pick an ism, right? And it doesn't work. How do you go higher than that, right? You started on level DEFCON 5 or whatever. Like you started with Nazi and rape. You can't get worse than Nazi and rapist, right? So anything they say about him now has to be walking back from the criticism they opened up with.
Hmm.
And again, I was like, that's why you shouldn't exaggerate like that. You shouldn't say something like Trump is not a Nazi. He's not a racist. He's not xenophobic. He's tactless. He's got a foul mouth. He's full of himself. Sure. But what war did he start? He hasn't, right? Some of his policies have worked. You have to acknowledge that. Joe Biden talking about leg hair and roaches and stuff like
I think he has
how
dementia.
a lot of people think that who've had grandparents or something with dementia, Alzheimer's. He gets these angry outbursts where he's pushing his finger in people's chests and challenging them to do push-ups. And he hit a guy in the arm. It's like, why? The guy's lost it. It's sad to see. I think they need to have him tap out and gracefully remove himself. I don't know who they'd replace him with, though.
Yeah, and I guess my next question is not really answerable, but because of that, we don't know who the final two are. But how do you, because I did see one of your videos, Ryan, and I don't know if your philosophy's changed on this, but you believe very strongly in people voting.
Mm-hmm.
How do you decide who to vote for in this system?
Yeah, I feel like voting is damage control. Like you can say, well, ideally, blah, 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 blah. But guess what? Voting, it's already here. It was here before you were born. And voting matters. That's why they spend billions of dollars trying to manipulate you into voting for their team. And it's odd to me because a lot of the people are like, I'm not going to vote because that's an endorsement of the system and da 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 da. I'm like, it exists whether you vote for it or not. If you don't vote, you're just letting other people decide it for you. Like at least make a dictatorship to force it to act like one. Um, but the same people saying all that when it came to referendums like legalizing marijuana, they're like, yeah, go vote for this, right? And it worked. In 22 states, it's now legal to smoke pot because of the voting process, because people did go out and did vote for something that they passionately, were involved with, and they changed the law. And that's how you do it. How else are you going to do it? Here's your pitchfork. Good luck.
You,
That's not going to work.
you
So
voted for Trump in 2016?
I did not because
You voted
my
for
state
Hillary.
was going to, no, hell no. My state was going to be red anyway. And I live in Japan, and it would be an absentee ballot, which they wouldn't even look at unless there was a tie. So my
Oh,
vote wouldn't matter. I vote Ron Paul every time. But I feel like if you're in a swing state, I think the presidential election is kind of silly, but I was thinking more like local elections and stuff. You need to vote. You got to get. There's nothing more important than your like county or your mayor, etc. That's really important, and you have a lot more say over that than you do the president, right? Like a lot of if you're in California, your state's gonna be blue. Doesn't matter. You can vote for Mickey Mouse. It's a done deal, right? And if you're in Mississippi or something, it's gonna be red. Just it is. Doesn't matter what you do for president at least. But even in California, they had Arnold. You can get a Republican in there sometimes. There's nothing that's a done deal.
right.
And I know there's a lot of corruption in voting. Blackboxvoting.org showed you how the software they can use to steal your votes. But if you don't vote, they don't even have to steal, right? They're still
Yeah.
going to vote. Force them to steal because then maybe you can catch them doing it. Why not? It just takes like a minute or two out of your day once a year, and you can do whatever you want the rest of the year. Whether you think it's protesting or lobbying or whatever you think is the most effective. It's not like, well, if you vote, you can't do any of that. You can do all those things and
Yeah.
vote. Even if you vote for your friend, whatever, it's a protest vote. It's like, and 0.8% went to another person. and it's good to show that and have that number climb. I remember North Carolina, somebody ran as D's nuts and got 9%.
What? Oh my goodness. Was that in the midterms?
His name
2018?
was D's apostrophe nuts. And people go, I'm voting for D's nuts. And that was a protest. It was a way of going out instead of not voting. No one, the majority never votes. The majority of people stay home. But it's more of in your face if they don't, and they all went out and voted for D's nuts. That's hilarious. And at work, it's like they have to say, oh, so and so with 22% and so with 46%, and D's nuts at third with 9% of the vote.
That might be my write-in vote in November, Ryan. Thanks to you.
I think Vermin Supreme just won the Libertarian Party in like New Hampshire or something. And this is an old guy that looks like a wizard that wears a fishing boot on his head. And it's the whole purpose is that he knows he's not going to win, but it's like, this is clown world.
Yeah,
So vote for the clown as a way of expressing this is clown world. And
expressing
I'm all
yourself.
for that. I'm like, yeah, go vote for something ridiculous, whatever. But yeah, not voting is not going to help us. I know so many people that were in love with Bernie Sanders, for example, who I do not like, but if that's who you support, you should have voted for him. And I'm like, did you vote? Nah. I'm like, okay, that's why I lost.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense. Speaking for myself, I wasn't into politics until 2016, and I couldn't ignore it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It just got that big, and I did vote for Hillary. I do regret voting for Hillary, but it ended up not mattering because Wisconsin essentially was one of the states that won the presidency for Trump, as far as I could tell. But you spoke somewhat uh, critical, shall we say, of Abe Lincoln.
Yeah.
And we don't have to talk about Abe right now, but do you have any
I'm very
leaders?
critical of Hillary, too.
And those two are definitely not in the same boat at all. But uh,
Abe Lincoln's the original neocon.
yeah,
The marriage between corporation and state starts with Abe. All these Southern politicians and stuff before, from Andrew Jackson, Thomas Jefferson, etc., have been trying to separate the bank and not allow a grand central bank like what had been done in Europe. And of course, Hollywood and the rest, they demonized Jefferson, they demonized Jackson, they demonized the South completely as like a bunch of racist cousin fucking backward retards or something. But, as a bunch of guys from Virginia, George Washington, right, and Madison, Thomas Jefferson, these are the guys that wrote the Constitution, wrote the Bill of Rights, separated away from the king. That's why you have America. It was mainly a bunch of Southerners, and they were opposed to the Hamilton faction, right? Who's linked in with
Alexander Hamilton.
Alexander Hamilton and his Rothschild backers from Europe versus the Jeffersonians that wanted to just have government leave you alone. Just wanted nothing more than a post office, and they didn't even have a standing army. They wanted nothing to do with that. And when it gets Lincoln's the 16th president, and by the time he comes around, he was a railroad lawyer, and the what would become the Rockefellers later, and the railroad tycoons, with the Lincoln faction and the Sherman faction start. That is the beginning of the marriage between corporation and state, where in the high taxes where they tax everyone and then they divvy it out to their plutocratic buddies. It's all Lincoln. Prior to the Civil War, every single road, canal, and bridge and railroad had been made by venture capitalists. Not a penny of federal taxes went to it. After Lincoln, it's completely subsidized by the federal government, selectively. So it's a winner take all situation. And then that continues right on to today, where the things that people criticize capitalism for, like, well, what about all these banker bailouts? I'm like, well, who bailed them out?
The
The
government.
government, right? What about no bid contracts? Well, who signed the contract? The government. What about these wars? Well, who did that? Who decided to do that? The government. Like, whatever your problem is, corporate welfare, no bid contracts, bailouts, it's all the state, because the state's married to these companies. They lobby. Like, who are they lobbying again? The government. Like, the government is the enabler, right? And prior to Lincoln, that just wasn't the thing. That wasn't the thing. everyone they tried to do it, but it had always been fought against, and the good guys had come out on top on that. After Lincoln, it was a disaster, and
What would
it
be
just
the
led to
alternative, Ryan, to central banking? Cryptocurrency or something
you
else?
just have the same as we had before. The Treasury can issue it interest free. There's no reason to add usury into the equation, and that's how they had the German miracle. That's another thing you're not allowed to point to because how bad it ends up later because of their terrible foreign policy of waging war and ethnic purity and all that crap. But as far as what Fritz had done for the Third Reich was he got rid of usury, he got rid of central banks, got rid of minimum wage, and everything took off. They went from bread lines to the richest nation in Europe. we had that we had that up the beginning of the United States, probably the fastest industrialization. We had a nothing nation up to number one because of our free markets and because of not having government pick winners and losers in the marketplace. That's how it's as simple as that. You make money off your own merit and your own enterprise, not state favoritism or using state regulation to stifle competition, things like that. That's what's wrong, and that's why they end up going into one war after another perpetually, is because of these plutocratic interests, and it all starts with Lincoln. But
You talked about our comparative advantage we have, Ryan, with respect to a free market. And this relates to something that Eric Weinstein said. He believes that our biggest comparative advantage over all other nations is science and technology. And he tied it into Epstein because Epstein was stealing. Well, not, I mean,
yeah,
I'll
he
speak
was.
on just, well, okay, well, he was stealing. I wasn't sure, so I didn't want to say definitively, but those kind of scientists and science secrets and stuff. And just tying it back to your forum, do you remember the first message you got from someone who said, "Hey, look at this guy"?
Um, when he got arrested, I went back and looked because the search function kind of crap now because Russian bots sort of destroyed our forum and I had to lock it down. So everything that was there is still there, but we don't have any new members or anything. But I went back just looking for the word Epstein and stuff. And I started talking about it in 2007, but I think I was getting messages at least the year before that because in the post I can see like the Christmas stuff and I can anyway I deduced it was about 2006, but they were really wild, like very hard to substantiate because who are you and why are you telling me? That's that's what I'm like. Tell the cops or something. You know what I mean? Like naive of me, right? That's what I thought. Well, what do you want me to do about it? I was hearing about the kind of things they were doing, raping kids, and I just thought, I know things like this exist. I knew about the Franklin Credit Union thing, and I knew about the Finders cult, the Satanic Panic, things like that. And later, we had Dream Boys, and um, Deborah Green Palfrey was around 2006 and 7 as well. I think DC Madame was around there, whatever. That would come later. So it was before all that. Uh, and I knew about Jeff Epstein being arrested in 2007. And we knew about his sweetheart deal. And I was like, oh, yeah, that guy's tied to the mega group because he had set up the Wexner Foundation. And the Wexner Foundation and Reporty, which is now called Carbine, were used by Ehud Barat to fill his coffers. And after he got arrested again in July, we found through his black book that he also knew Ehud Olmert, who's another Israeli prime minister, who also stuck his tongue down someone's ear and was accused of sexual harassment. He went to prison for obstruction of justice, taking bribes, and so on. But yeah, it was awesome. It was about 2007 or so when Moshe Katsav was convicted of rape, the Israeli president, and I was covering that. That's what that was. I was covering Moshe Katsav. I had to think back. He got convicted of rape, but the accusations started a little bit before that, around 2006, and it took some time in the courts and back and forth, and he was finally prosecuted, and he went to jail for 7 years. And
It's
that's
amazing
probably
how we
why
didn't
that's
hear
why
about
people
that.
contacted me. Yeah, I know the president of a state goes to jail for raping at least 4 people. And yeah, I mean, you can look it up. Moshe Katsav, convicted rape, and then there it is. And once you see it, like, oh wow, why wasn't that on CNN? I'm like, anything Israel does is not going to be on CNN. It's owned by Jeff Zucker, and he's an Israeli Zionist, so he sanitizes all their crimes. But when we were covering that, is when I got these weird things. And this guy on the forum, his name is Drew something, Drew J or Drew 5 or whatever, and this person would post some kind of off the wall stuff sometimes. It seemed like at the time. And but whatever, people were reading it, and I didn't censor anything. I just let it be. I'm like, the only things I endorse is the one that say Rye next to it. That was, and anyone can say anything. But I started getting private messages on there. People were scared to even post anything on my forum and saying how deep this was, and what Maxwell and Epstein were doing. Maxwell was always included. It was them, not him. It was a
Even in
them thing.
'07, Ryan.
Oh yeah, she
Wow.
was always there. And so I'm thinking about publishing those with the removing the names and stuff, obviously. But then I thought about, what if the people who did it can deduce who that is, and we don't know who all. There's Jane Doe, like we know Virginia Roberts and Mary Farmer and stuff, but there are other girls who are not public yet. And if I were to release that information, maybe they would get something happen to them. So I'm just sitting on it, waiting. But I was definitely being told stories about the Caribbean. But what I heard, they told me there's New Mexico, Caribbean, and Florida, and New York, and Paris, but also a place in Ohio. And that hasn't come out yet, unless they are talking about Wexner's properties in Ohio. Apparently, Epstein did not own anything there, but they were getting raped out in Ohio too. And weird stuff, man, like forced dental work and like
What would be the
really
purpose of
disturbing.
that?
He had a fetish for braces. Like, he wanted them to look perfect too. Some of them, because if they'd get somebody from MC2 modeling, from Jean-Luc Brunel, usually out of Eastern Europe, and they were targeting people with messed up homes and stuff. Nobody to fight for them. Parents out, whatever. They find these, and maybe they're beautiful and thin. They like that ballerina look, but they wanted their teeth to be perfect or what have you. Because they're grooming them for later. They actually would teach them how to massage, what to say, like making them professional honeypots. This is a serious operation.
Do you
And
fear for your safety, Ryan?
no, I mean, all the stuff I've said about September 11th and Iraq and all that would have had me popped a long time ago. So I don't think adding Epstein really makes a difference. Mossad hates me as it is. They've tried to ruin me financially already. I've been kicked off PayPal and everything else. I've been censored on YouTube 4 times. I've had to restart my channel. Kicked off Vimeo, kicked off Gumroad. I had to scramble to find a bank that would let me use them. No PayPal, no Venmo, no any of that stuff.
Did you get any of that back besides your YouTube channel?
No, just YouTube, and that's only because I went physically to their office. You know that story. And I
Yeah.
never did get back the 2008 one. That one was larger than anything I ever had. And
How many do you remember? How many subs?
I don't think they did subs in 2006. It was just likes and all, but the
Oh,
view
right.
count
Okay.
was, in the hundreds of thousands every time. So
Wow.
the first video I did, called RIP Palestine, had 72,000 views like a day, because nobody had ever made a Palestine video. And because you couldn't, like, where were you going to put it, right? It was just called Rest in Peace Palestine, and that got translated in a bunch of languages, and then of
Wow.
course that was gone. I have the English one. I put that on Live Leak, got banned off Live Leak, got banned off Daily Motion.
Banned off Live Leak. That's impressive.
I know, because they're showing dead bodies from war and stuff, but I showed Israelis killing Palestinians, and you can't do that. I think you can now. Um, but you couldn't do it when you were the only person doing it. When enough people do it, they can't censor it all, right?
Yeah, right.
And I think it's reached that point. Twitter's was like that too. I've been kicked off Twitter also. I just lost my Twitter last
Yeah, I
month.
just followed you on your new one.
Yeah, on the
Right,
new one,
it's what
yeah.
is it? Rye Dawson 2?
Right, Austin too, yeah. I had Ride Liberty before that, and I was banned on Facebook, like perpetually banned on Facebook for
That's
stuff I
pretty
wrote.
easy.
Very easy, but I was getting banned for like in 2008. You wrote duh duh duh, like so, banned for 30 days. I got a 90-day ban recently because of something I did in 2015, and I don't even know what it was because it was a picture and it doesn't exist anymore. So I couldn't even see what I'm being accused of. It doesn't matter. There's no
Yeah,
one you
they
can
can
talk
just make
to.
it up, right? I mean,
It's pretty much like, oh, here's a post. I'm like, I don't know what I wrote in 2015 on July 15th or something. Like, beats
what
me.
was it like growing up in the South, Ryan? And I don't know what state you are from in the South, but you're mixed race, as far as I know. You're half native and half Irish. I am similar. I'm half Mexican and half Nordic, so
Hmm.
quite similar. What was that like? Did you experience racism in the South growing up? Was that difficult, or how did that affect your upbringing?
I grew up on an island. It's part of North Carolina, but it's pretty unique. Cape Hatteras Island. There's three islands out there: Ocracoke and Roanoke and Hatteras. Well, Cape Hatteras. We call Roanoke Manio. Uh, I never, I never thought about race. Like it just didn't matter. I see liberals obsessed with it all the time, especially now. It's more now than it was in the '80s, um, when there actually was some racism. Right nowadays,
Yeah, and
everything's
the
about
Rodney
race.
King riot.
That was in the '90s, but even
Oh, sorry.
yeah, but sure, same. Your point is still valid. It it was like the '92 riots weren't just about Rodney King or black and white thing. It was a police abuse thing to everyone. They're sick of the
Mm.
LAPD, and in my opinion. But anyway, there was something what they did to Reginald Denny, which I totally disagree with. I was motivated by racial hatred, but they're trying to foster it on purpose. Like they're even been saying COVID-19 is racist,
Yeah,
which is
I saw
ridiculous.
that.
It's a disease, you know.
It's a microbe. It doesn't discriminate.
Of course not. And maybe it's hurting obese people more, or maybe it's a geographic thing, or whatever. And these people live in it hits cities, and a lot of minorities live in urban centers and not so much in the rural. And the rural is pretty safe from the disease, so the percentages are going to be higher proportionately to people that live in urban areas. Very easily explained. Obviously, not the virus going around going, "Well, I hate Mexicans," or hurt.
You didn't
It's
experience
not targeting
racism growing
people
up though,
in
Ryan?
Mexico, right?
Mm.
No, I never. I got more prejudice for like being a twin than I did race.
Oh
Oh,
wow.
can you read his mind and just dumb stuff like that, or what he did something and I didn't, and well, y'all did that. I'm like, there's no y'all. I didn't do that. He did that. Stupid. Never. No, I never. No one cared about race. Like I didn't even know some kids in my class were like half black or whatever. Never occurred to us. Like that's Tony or whatever. It never. I didn't even think about it at all. I know
Yeah.
people are like, "Oh, you're colorblind." Like, I really where I lived, and maybe they think the South is all racist, this and that, but it was never even spoken about. Didn't matter.
Do you talk politics at Thanksgiving, Ryan, or not anymore?
We don't have Thanksgiving over here, but
Well,
yeah,
do you talk
at home,
politics with your family, your biological family? I guess that's the more accurate question.
yeah. When I lived in the United States, sometimes we would just make fun of the government, because my family's very like I remember Uncle Terry. He passed away a couple of years ago, but he'd always say when he see somebody like sitting down eating a sandwich outside or something, he's like, "Oh, are you having lunch or is that a government job?" Because on our island we would see, the government would come after a hurricane or something way after we'd already done everything ourselves and
Yeah,
take some
right.
pictures and stuff, and you'd have somebody on the road crew or whatever, and there'd be like 10 of them watching one guy dig and stuff like that.
Taking pictures of the one guy.
Like out on those islands, the government doesn't do anything for us. And we just see it as like that stuff that happens in the cities over there somewhere or whatever, but they don't help us at all. And
Do you
just
have
thought the
a
government was kind of silly.
That's cool. You lived like right next to Roanoke, essentially. I actually didn't
Mm-hmm.
know that people lived on those islands. That's so awesome.
This is the very first time the English set foot on what's now U.S. soil was actually on July 4th in 1593, 83, excuse me. And they lived on Croatoan, which is now called Hatteras, for a couple years before they went to Roanoke. So the story of the lost colony skips the first couple years of them living in Croatoan,
Oh yeah, I didn't
and
know that.
then it starts with them in Roanoke, and then when they write Croatoan on a palisade on a tree, they act like it's some giant mystery, but it's not. Is they just went back to where they'd been the previous couple voyages. My brother dug them up, dug up with archaeologists.
The cadavers, or
We
what would it be?
found
Just the fossils?
he found the lost colony, figured out where it was located, figured out where the Indian village was, dug down, and we found English and native artifacts side by side.
Wow.
And there's ways to date certain things because of the pipes, which were brand new. They didn't have tobacco in the old world, and the Spanish weren't going to share it. And so we found, English letters, buttons, coins, a gun lock, things that had to be European, right? Mixed right in with the pottery, and you can date the area, and they have all these cool ways of figuring that out based on ceramics and this and that. And there's whole studies of just how, what was all the rage in different time periods and what they found. Now we know what the colonists brought with them, so it's them. Somebody just rang my doorbell.
You gotta go, Ryan?
I'll be just give me a second.
Yeah, no problem.
I think it's just the mail. Wife got it.
Best. I wouldn't know, but
Uh,
how did you guys meet, by the way? If I can edit it out if you want. I'm just curious.
Police? Oh, it's the cops for some reason. Why? They ain't me. It's police.
That's weird. I'll stay on the line, Ryan.
Yeah, I mean,
Or
let me. I
what do
don't
you
know.
need
I
me to
mean,
do?
I've been sitting here talking to you. I haven't done anything, so
Okay. Yeah, I'll
you
just
might
wait
be
here.
my alibi. I don't know what's going on. Police? That's unheard of over here. I lift weights with the chief of police, but he wouldn't ring my doorbell. Hmm. Well, she'll come get me if they need me.
Okay.
What'd you ask before that? We're talking about
I was actually
Harris
going
Island
to.
or something. Yeah, I never really experienced much racism until online. I have
Okay, that doesn't count. But
people spurred,
I
but
think
not
you
in the
answered the
face.
question. We can move
Yeah,
on. I was actually going to ask you about movies. Do you have World War II movies you like, or Civil War? There's way less Civil War movies, but do you have a good World War II movie, or are there none for Ryan Dawson?
I maybe Saving Private Ryan because it showed how horrible it was in certain scenes, like in Normandy.
Mm.
And there was a TV show called Tour of Duty that showed how gross the Vietnam War was. Not World War II, but um, I don't know, maybe Captain America because they just didn't even try to. It just made it
I still
from a
haven't seen
female
it.
point of view. It's World War II, or but no, it's I like documentaries better than the fictional
What about a
stuff.
documentary? Maybe one or two documentaries that blew your mind.
Um, I've seen some in Japan about the bombings that were pretty uh, difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty moving.
Do you
I have to
speak
think about them.
Japanese? Did you watch them in Japanese?
Yeah, they're. I don't think they have them in English. Seems like they would, but
How long did it take you to learn Japanese, Ryan?
mm, about 8 years. I'm trying to listen to what they're saying right now. So about 8 years. I mean, excuse me a second.
Everything good? All good?
I don't know.
You
Maybe
know?
somebody stole a bike or something. Like they never have crime.
Yeah.
I think his cry to scream, people call,
Uh,
and maybe we hurt him or something.
oh my gosh. The neighbors?
I don't know what it is. But he's, he's not normal screaming.
I know.
He's not normal.
All right.
And even he during nighttime, so calm.
Apparently, we got somebody called the police because our baby screams so loud at night.
Oh,
Yeah. He's got, edit this out, but he's got
okay.
eczema and some other problems, so he's always itching and waking up, having a hard time. So sad.
That's too bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
I actually lived in Okinawa for a little over a year. That's why I know a bit of Japanese. You ever
that's
been there?
fine. Never been to Okinawa.
No.
It's like I grew up on islands, so I know nothing special to me.
Yeah, for most Americans it would be, but not for someone who was born on an island. Do you have any books you recommend that are not listed on your website? Because I
Yeah, I
did
don't even
see.
remember which ones are on there or not, but
Okay.
depends what you're into. I have a whole bookshelf over here. Uh, the ones that are on my website are almost all political books, right, or history books.
Have you
But
written any, Ryan?
yes,
Yeah.
I've got The Separation of Business and State. And I've got Welcome to the USSA, kind of a play on words like it's the USSR. And I co-authored a section of a book called Why Peace, which is it's like 600 pages, but I really recommend that book. I think that's on my website. I don't know. Compromise, if you want to know about, it's by Terry Reid. If you want to know about Iran-Contra, that is the book to get. And I think if you understand Iran-Contra, you can understand Syria because it's really the same sort of modus operandi that they're using. Trick or Treason is good by Robert Perry on the same. I enjoyed Classified Woman by Sibel Edmonds. And I've got a lot of JFK books, a lot of Civil War books, a lot of Thomas Sowell. Bruce Lee, I like him too.
Yeah,
Not
you a big
political, but
Bruce Lee guy?
I love his Striking Thoughts. It's a lot of Bruce Lee aphorisms.
Yeah, I heard he was quite the philosopher. I still haven't checked it out yet.
He studied philosophy. He lived his philosophy. He didn't study it. He lived it. I have a lot of philosophy books. I don't have so many philosophy books with me in Japan. I read them and used them in the United States, and I have a library at my old home full of philosophy books.
Back in the States?
And it's everything from the classic ancient Greeks to philosophy of language and philosophy of martial arts. It's all in there.
Do you have a leader that you admire in history, Ryan?
Kate Beckinsale. No. Yeah, they all have admirable qualities. I don't have a single like I wish this person was alive or anything like that, but I think
What about, maybe I can rephrase the question, or I don't. It might be a different answer. Someone you could have conversation with that you would want to, that is no longer around.
Einstein. I'd
What would you
love to
talk
talk to
about?
Albert Einstein. I'd like to tell him what we found so far about quantum gravity and see what he thinks. I talked to Sabrina Hausenfelter, who works on, she's a theoretical physicist that is tackling that problem. I would just love to know what Einstein, like if Einstein could see the work we've done now, what he could come up with. I'd like to talk to Crazy Horse too. Tell him to go join General Lee. No. There's a lot of people. There's a lot. I'd love to talk to Crazy Horse just to get in their mind, like what that was like. And Thomas Jefferson is up there. Um, Aristotle, Pythagoras, Heraclitus. None of these people speak English though, but I'm just assuming if if I could speak to them, they just look at me blankly. I can't speak Greek. It's Greek to me, but man, that would be cool. I mean, I wouldn't mind talking to Osama bin Laden either.
Yeah.
Figure out what was going through his head. Try to reason him out of it, but yeah, I'd like to know. Archimedes, that guy was Chad. Ben Franklin would be fun for sure.
Yeah, he was kind of like our Da Vinci, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was more political than Da Vinci, though.
Yeah,
and
not
less artistic, but he definitely dabbled. He was a polymath of sorts. Yeah.
Well, that's
Da
great.
Vinci's a good one. Da Vinci'd be fun.
Oh yeah,
I'd like to pick his brain.
he would be one or two for me. I don't know.
I'm
Top
overlooking
three.
some major ones, I'm sure. I didn't think about it, but thinking
That's all right. We've been talking
I'd like
about
Ali. That'd be
Muhammad
fun.
Ali. Yeah, I saw your. I don't know if it was a video you did or just a segment of a video, but you love Muhammad Ali, don't you? You have a T-shirt.
I
Muhammad Ali
often have
t-shirt.
him wearing the Ali. I got that a month before he died.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
Did you ever
I
get
was
to
like-
meet him?
I never did. I've met people who've met him and getting all the Ali stories from them. And I've a buddy of mine has a glove that's signed by Ali and Norton, Foreman, and Frazier. He got all of them.
Wow.
That's a man. I was a big Sugar Ray Leonard fan. I'd like to meet him. Still could. That would be fun.
You
I'd
like
like to talk to
boxing a
Mike
lot, Ryan?
Tyson too, because that guy's an interesting person. I'd be a little scared though, because he's somebody described it as like sitting next to a tiger. He's calm right now. What if he changes his mood? What are you gonna do?
I like that, man. I actually recently got into boxing. Who's the best in the world right now, do you think? Do you still keep up with it? Or
Well, Fury's the champion.
what
He's gotta
about
go with heavyweights.
oh you put heavyweights on top no matter what?
I mean, that's who's gonna win, right?
You think Fury could take down Bruce Lee?
In a boxing match, yeah.
What about MMA?
No,
No.
Bruce Lee would kneecap him seconds.
Yeah. What about
I don't know how much Tyson. I don't think, assuming he doesn't know anything other than boxing. Like on a professional level at least. This is how it would go. Bruce Lee walk up, kick him in the nuts, kick him in the knees.
and
knock
then
him out.
aphorism,
Yeah,
exit
they
scene.
we saw Ali fight Aoki in Japan, and he just got leg kicked over and over to where he couldn't even walk the next day. And that is the best boxer, right? And didn't know what to do, didn't know how to block a kick, didn't know how to check it. And he's not even fighting a Bruce Lee type. He's just fighting a pro wrestler that knew how to kick a little bit, and he got wrecked. So it's very different. But in a boxing match, Bruce Lee's not going to beat heavyweight boxer. Like,
Yeah.
run around away from him the whole time, I'm sure, but yeah, it's not going to work.
Any
But,
of the smaller guys you like?
oh well, Mayweather is gone now, I guess, but he was fun to watch. Pacquiao was fun to watch. Triple G, but I like MMA more than boxing. Got too, I don't know, not political. Just too many suits and analysts and stuff made it not. The MMA, that's the same thing's happening. You got all these people that really don't know anything about fighting, like commenting with their opinions and stuff, and it just got all.
Isn't that aggravating?
Yeah, I'm like,
Oh,
shut
man.
the fuck up. You know what you're talking about.
Yeah, especially they're getting paid too. But
I like when former fighter, like I'll listen to Bisping or something, or Chael Sonnen. I don't want to hear some guy that's never fought saying, "Oh, that guy got exposed and hard." Like, you don't know what you're saying. Shut up.
yeah, right.
This style's better than that. It is not. you know, next year you'll flip and go, well, now it's this. It always depends on the person. It started out with BJJ, and then there's a wrestling phase, and then a kickboxing phase, and a Muay Thai phase, and then back to wrestling. And it just, depends on the fighters. That's all. All of it works if you do it well.
Do you do any martial arts?
I did. I had my own gym. I used to teach jujitsu. I'm very serious in martial arts. And I had one of my black belts, Eric McGinnis, was competing right now. He's trying to go into UFC, but because of the virus, can't get a match. So
You're
sucks.
wow. I didn't know you were a sensei in BJJ, Ryan. I would not have guessed that.
Yeah, I'm very serious about fighting, and I've also done karate and judo, and I won a tri-state tournament in judo. I got a bronze medal,
What
which was
weight do you
stolen,
compete
by
at?
the way. It was stolen from
Your
me.
medal was stolen?
hmm I took it when I went to get to teach jujitsu. Like, how do you prove? Like, there was no. Now we've got Abu Dhabi and all this stuff, but we didn't all the time. A lot of people didn't know what the hell it was till the Gracies, right?
Yeah.
So, and even then, if you're not a UFC fan or whatever, like what's jujitsu? They know karate and taekwondo. Maybe they don't know that. They don't get it. Is that like wrestling? Yeah. So I brought my medal, and I'm like, I want to teach out of this gym. Everyone around me knew anyway, but and I was like, I have this belt from this guy and this belt from that guy, and they're like, look, here's the medal. Oh, okay, and that's what did it. But later on, it was stolen out of my car. And I'm like, you bastards. In my old videos on YouTube, you can see it in the background hanging on the wall, like 2006 or 7, like the ones I reposted on my news channel. It's back there. Although a lot of those videos are getting erased. I know the one I did about Tibet, it's in the background. But
And that was
what
mainland
was
that you
going on?
competed there, Ryan?
It's in the US, yeah.
Oh, it's US mainland. Okay. And what
Yeah.
weight class did you compete at?
That one was, I was shit. I was 19, 20 years old. I think it was 155. Now I'd be 205. I grew a lot. Lifted weights a lot too.
Did you
But
grow in height since then as well, or just thickness?
maybe a half inch. I've actually shrunk in height because I've crushed the disc C7 in my
Ooh.
neck. So yeah.
How did you do that?
Jiu-jitsu.
Oh, did somebody get
I
you
was
in a lock?
I was doing it with his last name is Minami, big Japanese dude, and I had an underhook on the left side, and I was going for a shot, from a shot to a switch, because I knew he was going to sprawl and I was going to switch, and he tried to underhook to block my shot so he could sprawl like GSP does a lot, and I, instead of having my head up like that when I shot, I was kind of looking at the floor, which you're not supposed to do. But that's because I was going to pop up on this leg and turn that way and like tackle him sideways. I don't know if you know what a switch is, but it's when you go from a double to a single on the side. But my head was, you're supposed to have your head up like that, and mine was down, and I got pushed straight down
Oh,
uh, by about a 245-pound man, and me being about 215 and shooting in, and I felt it go get it, and it was all hot, and I was like, oh man, I just laid there, and he took side control right away, and I didn't even react, and he just stopped because he knows something's wrong because I didn't even move. I was like, I think I broke my neck, and I didn't break my neck, but I smashed the disc, and so it hadn't swollen and stuff yet. So it doesn't instantly hit, and so he put ice on it and stuff. I remember riding the train home going, oh man, it's gonna suck. It's gonna suck tomorrow. And it did. It was all fucked up. Like I couldn't turn my head or anything. I do. But the good thing is physical therapy in Japan, I got the pulley system pull up in my head and went through all that. In the US, that would have been a nightmare. I would have been in debt for the rest of my life, you know. But here, universal health care, not a problem. I mean, it's a problem, but at least it wasn't a financial problem. So That made me shorter though, slightly.
Wow.
I think you
I've
get a little
never heard
shorter
that
as you get older,
before.
but
Do you still roll?
yeah, yeah, I still roll. Uh, I'm more of a punching bag now for the younger guys because I can win in the beginning, but I don't have the stamina that I had in my 20s. And because I've got kids and I've got a desk job and I just don't, you know, I can't train like I used to be able to.
Right.
But I have enough experience that I can kind of, I'm like the Undertaker, kind of pace myself and get what I need in and win. But, when you're rolling, okay, they tapped, they tap again. And then from then on, I'm just tired. But in my head, I'm like, it doesn't matter because whoever gets the first one is the real winner. Because I could have broke your arm or whatever it was, right? So I can't hang with him anymore. Uh, I don't have the endurance of these top athletes, and it's just age, man. It sucks.
Yeah.
Really sucks. I hate losing, and sometimes I won't. I just won't win either. I just run out the clock, doing all defense. Because there's ways in when you're rolling where if you're not being offensive, and the reason is because I don't have the cardio or whatever, I can still kind of turtle up or get into resting positions and stuff and just waste the time. But
Just
I
park the
should,
bus in front
what
of
I
the
ought to
goal
be
as they
doing
do
is
in
get,
soccer.
yeah, it's like four corners in basketball or something like Dean Smith, but it's, just holding on to stuff that you don't have just to run out the time. you know? But
You're a basketball fan too?
yeah, I'm from Michael Jordan State, I played basketball. I lost this eye, so that got me into wrestling. But I really enjoyed basketball when I had depth perception. And I still liked watching UNC and stuff play. And
Your eye is a replacement, right?
no, this is my eye, but I had a piece of asphalt go through my eye when I was 10 and a half and um, lost my vision temporarily. But it was during basketball season. So I switched over to wrestling, which you don't really need depth perception to wrestle. You feel it mostly. And I don't know, got hooked on that. Did both the next year, which was crazy. So I was going to two practices.
Yeah, they're in the same season, aren't they?
hmm Yeah.
How did you do that? What was your day like? That was in high school?
No, I was only 11, 12. I was
Oh,
wrestling.
okay. So you were middle school. Wow. So you had
Yeah.
two athletic practices. That's a full day right there. I could
Mhm.
not do that. So high
Yeah.
school, or sorry, basketball and BJJ. Any other athletics you did? Well, you
Yeah,
said
I did.
wrestling.
Well, I played soccer because we didn't have football. The island's too small. Like the team didn't exist. I played high school football, but in elementary and middle school, because I went to high school in Virginia, but I didn't have the opportunity. But we played soccer, basketball, and uh, baseball as soon as it was available, and it wasn't available until I was 10. So there's no t-ball or anything like that. And I only got to play when I was 10 and 11 because my birthday is at the very end of July, so I wasn't allowed to play at 12, even though I was still 11.
Oh,
Whatever.
okay. Because you didn't meet the cutoff.
Yeah, the cutoff is August 1st or whatever. It sucked. I really liked baseball. And then surfing and bodyboarding, all the water sports in the summer. That's what every island person does. But then in high school, I did football, basketball, and baseball. And I chose basketball over wrestling because I often got disqualified in wrestling from illegal moves and holds and stuff. And I just thought basketball was more fun and was definitely more popular. Like nobody watches wrestling then. It's become more cool now because of UFC, whatever. But no one wrestling, whatever. It was the secondary sport. Basketball was the main sport, so I played basketball. Um, but martial arts is what I really like. Junior year onward from high school, I just did martial arts. I stopped playing all the school sports because I wanted to concentrate on on fighting, because that's all I ever wanted to do. I only played the other sports because the martial arts weren't available. As soon as it was available, that's what I did. I always had a heavy bag at home, and my grandfather was a professional boxer, and I learned some punching, and I would kick it, and I'd read books and do what I could on myself, and I would stretch, and I'd watch Van Damme movies and do all these ridiculous stretches and splits and stuff, did all that stuff. And then I didn't get any formal training until I was 16. I would come to Charlottesville with Jim Ennis and practice karate, and then I would go back to Lynchburg where I was at boarding school. And then when I was 17, I moved to Charlottesville so I could do martial arts full time. So I had a little bit of background in wrestling, but then it didn't. It's called Narahate Karate Do, which is sort of Aikido and karate mixed together. And then took judo for Don Tyrell, and my Newaza was really good in judo, and which is where jiu-jitsu comes from. And then started studying jiu-jitsu with Gustavo Machado, who had a school in Virginia Beach at the time, and Vince Bourdin, one of his, I think he was a brown belt at the time, but he would come over and do lessons, and did that in college. Created a club, and we did our first college competitions between Maryland and Richmond and UVA and William and Mary. And that was the first time they ever had college matches for jiu-jitsu ever. I was the first generation of that. Did that. It was fun. Continued with that, and then I studied with Team Rock in North Carolina a while with Greg Thompson and those guys. Saunders, who now teaches the Gracie School in Hawaii. And then I started my own school in Hatteras, and I taught guys like Eric McGinnis and Michael Carrianis, Stephen Hines. They've won like Naga Nationals and stuff. I'm proud of all those guys. Then I came here with Team Padastra. Started doing judo again too, judo and jiu-jitsu. And then, but now I've got a kickboxing gym right under my house. So I'm thinking get back into that, because I can only do that a few more years, I think. I'm not doing this shit when I'm 50, so.
Why is that, Ryan?
Or maybe I will, because there's other stuff I want to do. Like I want to make a Kennedy film, and just now, like you said, I'm kind of got that bump from Sean Atwood and others, so I'm more motivated. It's worth my time to do an Epstein movie, or I'm making an interactive map. Actually, I already got the poster made. Not this poster. We got a better one with faces and everything. And I like the interactive map because I don't want to make a poster and then go, oh, now we got to add this person or this business, because it's ongoing. We keep on discovering more and more things. I was just talking to somebody about Leon Black and Bill Gates. They don't need the money. Why are they hanging out with this guy? I know why, but what's their explanation, right? Bill Gates has hundreds of billions of dollars. He doesn't need financing from Epstein, right? Why is he visiting him in person? What's he doing down there? But anyway, more and more will come out on that. So I'm thinking when I get older, I'm eventually going to have to stop martial arts and focus more on sit down stuff, making books and movies. But my kids are interested in it, so I stay interested in it. I did some stick fighting too. I've done every martial art there is. I was a huge fan of Bruce Lee, man. That guy, watching the first Bruce Lee movie, I was like, wow, I want to do that. Sold. And we had Benny the Jet and Chuck Norris, a lot of guys that are either American Indian or half American Indian are doing very well in martial arts. So
Chuck Norris is half native?
Yeah.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he doesn't look like it because I think his other half is ginger, like super duper white. So
that's my half too. That's my half of white.
Yeah.
My dad is actually quite dark for being from Mexico, so that's why I still have some color. Because my mom,
you kind of look like a Spaniard.
Yeah,
like Spanish guy, but yeah.
When it's actually my last name. I won't say it, but it's from Spain. Yeah, but even though it's my family's from Mexico, so it's kind of interesting. And the Dawsons are from Ireland, which I learned of your interview with Sean. And when you went there, to get your channel reinstated. You got like a welcoming party from the mayor of Dublin, right?
Paul, yeah, so he didn't give me that for that reason. It was when he found out the Dawson Hotel is right across from the mayor's mansion, and I actually stayed up in Cork Park, but I thought I got to stay one night at the Dawson Hotel because on Dawson Street, because our ancestor built the street, and I don't think he built the hotel; they just named it after him. But he built Grafton Street, Ann Street, and Dawson Street, which used to be a swamp, and he was a developer, and he filled it in, and he made the center of Dublin essentially, and built the mayor's house. And I was going to Dawson Hotel, and the mayor happened to be walking into the mansion there, and a guy I know knew him. Was like, "Hey, I know the mayor. There he is," and oh, he'll love this. And so we went up there, just knocked on the door, and someone else answered, and we said, "Oh, we're here to talk to the mayor." And this is one of the Dawsons, and they said, "Oh, all right." So we came in, and I told him our whole history. He knew. He had the plaques in the wall and stuff. They're very serious about their history in Ireland. Very proud. And it was just pretty cool. Like full circle. Actually, I had a box of Japanese chocolates that I gave him as a gift. We had a meeting the next day. We just sort of talked a little bit and then set up a meeting for the next day. Got a full tour of the mansion. It was really awesome. And they actually owe us certain like pounds of sugar per year out of some old agreement. And I was like, he better not like give me all this sugar tomorrow because I don't want it. It's not worth as much as it was back then. But the debt was never paid, and the Dawsons never asked for it. They're like, whatever. But I gave him that chocolate, so technically I've fed the mayor again.
So now he owes you
the Choctaw Indians sent supplies and food rations to Ireland while it was suffering under the potato famine. And because an administrator years before to the Trail of Tears was an Irishman and kept relationships with the natives that were moved to Oklahoma. But when they found out what was happening to Ireland, because this guy would give them extra rations and stuff, and when they found out what happened to Ireland, they sent supplies to try and help the Irish. And there's a plaque to the Choctaw if you go into the mayor's house, on the wall on the right side, there it is. And that was like the end of the tour, because we start for this room, go all through it all. There it is, and there's that plaque. And I thought, well, this is fitting too. Let me tell them that story.
Are you half
Choctaw? Something else, man. I met a senator. I met the mayor. I was treated like a king in Ireland.
That's awesome.
I'm like, man, in America, you cannot just go talk to the mayor or a senator. No way.
Especially of a huge city like Dublin.
Right. The biggest city. But
are you Choctaw then? Your
no,
house?
It was just they're from North Carolina though. So.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Excellent. Mm-hmm. Well, that's pretty much all the questions I had for today, Ryan. Let me see if any other pop up. No, I think that was it. Well, I just wanted to thank you for chatting with me, Ryan, because I can tell you're coming from a good place in how you do your work, and I'm definitely going to check it out more. I watched, I think, 2 of your YouTube documentaries, because I know it's a little different edit from what you have on your Patreon, which I haven't checked out yet, but I have seen 2 of your...
Because YouTube will remove it.
Right, yeah, and you do that on purpose, so you do edit it a little bit, but it's very interesting stuff. I highly recommend people go check out Ryan.
Did you see Trump's sinus ball and chain?
I haven't seen it yet. That's actually next on my list. Is that on your YouTube channel as well, Ryan?
Yeah, it's on
there.
It
is. Okay. Yeah. I will check it out. And Ryan has Patreon. He runs his own website, the ANC Report. I'm sorry, ancreport.com. And all other links with Ryan, I will put in the description box below. I just want to ask you, Ryan, and I'm not going to edit this out, but why did you agree to talk to me?
Why not?
Yeah, I like that. Well, if you want to talk again, I would love to, Ryan, because you I also love history, and you're an expert in this field, and I would love to learn some more from you and chat from you.
I'll usually talk to whoever, as long as they're not a kook or a dick. Like, I'll even talk to them, but I'm not going to be polite.
Yeah.
Somebody started in on it.
And you do actually debates on your YouTube channel with people,
Mhm.
which I think is so cool because not only is it entertaining for your subscribers and other people to see two people kind of go at it, but I think it's a skill that everyone needs to work on, especially in this climate that we're in.
Yeah, people ask me about like, oh, you own so and so in this debate. What'd you do to prepare for that? Like nothing. I just all I do is tell the truth. That's my strategy. Just get up there and tell the truth. And if
Yeah.
I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I don't care. If I'm wrong, then I'll change my mind. That to me, that's the whole purpose is figuring out what happened. That's all that matters. So, and I've asked people to debate the Civil War, the Iraq War, or anti-Zionism, whatever. Sometimes they will. Most of the time they won't. But yeah, that's there's a blood sports era where people just want to see someone get wrecked or whatever. But I don't wreck people by like dogging on their character or whatever. Like Joe Biden, you're a dog faced pony or whatever. I wreck people by just going way over their head and dumping so many facts on them that they just look like they don't know what they're talking about. And it's not on purpose. I'm like, you asked me to debate, and I'm just going to tell you what I know. And if you can't respond to it because don't even you don't really know the subject, that's your fault.
Yeah, there was one guy who was, I'm not gonna lie, like unless you have a worthy opponent, up to a certain degree, it's borderline unwatchable. This guy was. I watched it just for a bit of
Is that the
entertainment.
redheaded guy?
I can't remember what guy it was, but I was like, dude, I have better things to do, you know, because like if I'm
Oh,
not
I
getting
know.
entertained by it, but it's like he took so long to just say his point. I'm like, dude, already, I'm like, you know that you're about to get wrecked. You know you're out of your league with this debate right now, because otherwise they would just come out and state their point instead of taking forever to get to it.
Yeah, some bearded dude did that, and sometimes it takes like a year and a half or so to set up a debate. I'm like, y'all keep this. Just call me. We set this up in like 3 days, right?
Yeah,
The time zones is the only problem. Willing to talk to whoever, you know.
awesome.
There's a lot of people like, oh, you fucking racist with your Confederate flag. I'm like, do you want to talk about the Civil War? I'll talk about the Civil War. They don't want to.
Hmm.
They'll go off on their own and be like, oh, the secession papers mention slavery here and here. And I'm like, do you want to hear the explanation for that? You do? No, you don't. You just like saying that over and over, right? They're not interested in figuring out the truth. They just want to have some. It's like moral indignation with the halo. They want to find something that they can beat their chest about and be like, well, racism's bad. Oh, of course it is. No shit. Slavery's stupid. No one would say otherwise. But they want this very simplistic point of view where, like, we are good because we stopped this very undeniably evil thing. I'm like, that's a cool story, but it doesn't match reality. No wars ever because people are good ever. It's always government, and they're never doing it because it's the right thing to do or anything like that. Maybe the occupied fight for their existence, and you can say they're on the right. They have noble reasons. Survival is a good reason. So the Palestinians, the American Indians, the Irish that fought the British, that I understand why they're fighting. But what about the people on the offense? This is pure greed. You know? But they never admit that. Whenever we go to war, it's always some excuse to get rid of a dictator, or spread democracy, or some shit. And it's always just corporate interest.
I'm actually kind of shocked we haven't mentioned the coronavirus at all yet, Ryan. It's actually probably a testament to your ability to talk about, well, both of our ability to talk about something else. But I have an anticipation, or I don't know if this will happen after this coronavirus thing settles, and whether or not it'll settle in the way that I imagine, I don't know. But it seems absurd to me that this war has been going on in the background for what's it been, like 18 years now, almost 20 years. And I don't know, it seems that most people almost have forgotten about it.
And I think the heroin and fentanyl epidemic going on in places like New Jersey is directly related to the war in Afghanistan. And it just, the news, even the war in Syria too, it's still going on too for a long time, more than a decade. And out of sight, out of mind, right? They don't report it. So no one's thinking about what a waste of money it is, what a waste of life it is. Why are we aiding Al Qaeda? Things like that. And with the virus, I think it's a massive overreaction. I mean, where I live, Japan is the second place to be infected. It had under 300 deaths. This is a country of 128 million people, so it's not some small place like Switzerland or something. We've had fewer deaths than they have, actually. It didn't lock anything down. Let kids out of school, and we started doing baseball and sumo without a crowd, but all the businesses are open. There's no travel restrictions or anything, unless you're from another country. That was the way to handle it without wrecking the economy. But I feel like a lot of people in the U.S. thought, hell yeah, I can get unemployment plus Trump bucks. Yeah, I'm scared to go outside, keep the lockdown going, because they're having all their leisure time and still getting paid, and they don't have to work. That's part of it. The others who are desperate to work because they need to pay off mortgages and things, and they can't because of the lockdown. It's just, I feel so bad for those people because, yeah, there's a virus, but this isn't smallpox, right? It's basically the flu. And when people try and write that off, you have to understand that the flu killed 70,000 Americans last year. It kills tens of thousands of people. And in Italy, the flu was killing 22,600 people per year since 2013. Right? So, and I think COVID's at around 17 or 18,000. It's not even the flu yet, but it sucks. It's a disease, and it's affecting especially the elderly and the obese, like every disease does. But you cannot just stop life over that.
Edward Snowden said that the foundations for oppression are being built right now.
He's right.
What can someone listening to this do, Ryan, to prevent that? Or what can we do?
I would suggest, number one, like, yelling at buildings is useless. So lobbying is the most effective thing. And I know it's not it's like, that's hard. Yeah, it is, but that's what works. Going to DC, setting up a meeting and talking this out. That's what's going to make a difference. And then turn off your TV. That's the first thing you can do. That's all they do is doom porn all day, right? But until things normalize a bit, there's not much people can do, because right now some of them can't even go outside in certain cities. They're like zoo animals. I would say just go out anyway, but you got to chip away at it. There's no, well, if we do this, it'll all change. I don't think there are any solutions like that. I focus on ending aid to Israel because I see that as why all these wars in the Middle East happen. That would save us trillions of dollars. But there's many other things we need to do. We've got to break our addiction to war. That's for certain. And economically, we should never allow something like the 2008 bailouts to happen again. They're talking about bailing out hedge fund managers and things like, no way. And prosecutions have to be made in things that already exist, like the Epstein affair. Dershowitz, Prince Andrew, there are people there who are not in hiding, who could be subpoenaed. And there needs to be public support for such a thing. Just trust me, that's going to unravel and a lot bigger than anybody knows. If we can get it in court and get power subpoena. So, supporting things like that, and you've got to support Julian Assange, right? People like from WikiLeaks. They went to jail for us to give us the correct information. And so if you want to support Assange, pushing for a pardon, or at least getting him out of prison, like that needs to happen. And there are a lot of groups and organizations that are already in place for you to. You don't have to start one. They're there. Just go join and participate in that. And you have to be responsible when you vote your local and state elections too. They just got a libertarian candidate. It's now the mayor of Knoxville, Glenn Jacobs, right? Kane from WWE. And he's done wonders there. I just took getting the right people. And so if Knoxville can do it, any city could do it. I wish more people who weren't involved in politics would get into politics. We need more regular people involved in the process, because it's all career politicians right now. Almost all. That sickens me. But number one that predicates everything I just said is supporting alternative media. Because if we don't have YouTubers or whatever, or Press TV, RT, etc., telling you the truth, you don't even know what to fight. So fighting censorship has to be number one. Because if we're not allowed to disagree with whatever the establishment's saying, then we'll never get anywhere. So getting a voice is number one, is becoming the media. And then number two is acting on that information. And I think the best way to act is through lobbying right now, legally. That would be
Well said, Ryan.
You know what I'm saying?
Definitely. Thanks so much for chatting with me today, Ryan. And thanks everyone for tuning in. Until next time.
Peace.